Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep. What company do you keep?
Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. It is Sunday, June 23rd, and we are glad to be here. We thank all of our followers each and every Sunday, particularly our social media followers. And so what we're going to ask our social media followers to do, of course, is to tune into listenvisionlive.com so that you can see the show in its entirety. And we are expecting a guest. I'm going to tell you about her in a minute. She's running a little late. But I am Dr. Sharon Cradle, and I am the oldest of the other missing dynamic duo. And of course, she would say that she's the favorite, and because I'm the oldest and I have great emotional intelligence, I just let her have it. And of course, we could not do this show without our dear friend, Walita Hawkins, sitting in for Sherelle, who is away. And as you all know, I was away for the last 2 weeks, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and I'll tell you what our topic is. But we're going to ask Walita to open up with scripture. And I want to make sure that you all have the telephone number as well, because the topic that we're going to talk about, it may not be pertinent for your children, but it may be pertinent for your children's children, your family members' children, your cousins' children. And so you all are going to want to really, really tune in to what we're going to have to say today. So, Walita, can you open us up with our scripture, please?
Sure. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain.
That is right. And we talk about labor. The topic today, when she gets here, is going to be the college admissions process, as well as some tips that you need to know. And this phenomenal woman named Regina Robinson is going to join us and have a conversation with us about that. So get your paper, your pen, just everything so that you can partake in this conversation. So while we're waiting for her to get here, we really want to talk about some general topics, and they are very important topics to what's going on in our society today. And the first question I want to ask is, are you registered to vote?
Very important.
And I'm just going to leave it right there. And if you are registered to vote, are you planning to vote? I'm going to leave that right there. And if you are registered and you are planning to vote, are you planning to take someone with you to vote? And I'm going to leave that right there. So why do I bring this up? It just disturbs my spirit. I'm just going to tell you all very honestly that we know, those of us who care to know the history of these United States of America, that voting hasn't always been of benefit for our people, right? And when I hear our people say that voting is not important, it doesn't matter, something just goes through me because I cannot for the life of me understand that. I'm just being very honest. So I would say to those people who are registered to vote but will not vote, the question is, why do you think there's such an effort to keep you from voting if your vote does not matter? See, it's just some common sense that we have to apply to this. And so I'm urging everyone to talk to your loved ones or your circle of friends or people who are like, I'm not voting. And just kind of get an understanding in terms of why they feel that way. And then give them some other information that they may not know that's going to help persuade them to go out and vote. And Walida, I don't know if you know people who didn't vote and what the conversation was.
A lot of people feel that their vote that really doesn't matter. And I think that they're looking at it from the federal standpoint and not necessarily the state and local government.
Exactly.
But it matters there too.
Exactly.
Because those are the communities that you live in, the roads that you drive back and forth on, and your vote matters, especially on the referendums, that you have to read all of those paragraphs. Those things are important.
The
judges, the libraries,
yes, all of that.
The transportation, all of that. And a lot of people feel that, I'm not voting because my vote doesn't count. And it does. It makes a difference in your community.
And I'm going to tell you all something. If you're not paying attention, particularly at the national level, in terms of what's happening with federal judges, that's why our vote matters. Yes. Because with this particular administration, they're putting these judges in these positions
strategically
so that rights can be taken away from people. And so I wanted to start with that because we know that the Democratic debate is coming up on the 26th and the 27th. And I want everybody to mark their calendars so that you can tune in and hear from the many who are going to grace the stage, because there's a lot of them. And so what I understand is all of them, I think it was maybe 22 to 26 Democratic candidates, all of them will not get on the stage. And the reason why is because in order to get selected to participate in the debates, the candidate has to have at least a 2% polling rating
in the top 3 polls.
In the top 3 polls. In the top 3 polls in order to get on stage. So that's some information that I think is very important for people to know. So we're not going to hear from everyone, but we will hear from the ones who meet that criteria. And so it is going to be 2 nights, which makes sense because there are so many of them that are going to be on the stage, and they were randomly selected to participate in the debate in terms of which night and who was going to be on the stage with whom.
And it's important that we listen to see what their platform is.
Exactly.
And it can't always be about the most popular thing.
No, not at all.
Listen, we have to get out and vote, and we have to know the candidates' platforms that we're voting for, what they're standing for, because there's a lot of them out there. And listen, we have to make our voice heard. And if we don't know, we can't speak to it.
And more importantly, what's important to you as a voter? Because what we know is that we are on information overload. And so we have to decide as individuals, what's important for us as well as what's important for the collective good of society. Right? And what is our legacy going to be? Because, see, when you talk about the scripture that Walida read, she talked about, being of service, being of labor, so we're laboring now. Hopefully we are for the generations that's coming behind us. So we'll benefit while we're still here, but hopefully the things that we're doing is going to impact the generations coming behind us. So then what's important to you? Some things that's important to me, and I think I've talked about this before. I've never been like this environmentalist, but the more I pay attention, the more I understand if our environment, taking care of our environment is not our number one priority, then none of this other stuff is really going to matter. It just is not, because we're not going to be able to survive it. Exactly. Our generations won't be able to survive
and if you think about a lot of the illnesses, and the different foods and things, and that's our environment. That's the ground. You know what I mean? What are we putting back into the ground that our food is coming from? And and what are the processing process, and all of that waste and things that's just going back into the environment. I think it's all connected. You read so much about it. The illnesses being connected to our environment and our foods and things of that nature. And that's important. negative 45. He cut a lot from the Environmental Protection
Yes.
Agency. You know, we lost a lot there, and I think that went over a lot of people's heads.
Yes.
You know, because they really were just focusing on, well, he's overturning everything that President Obama did. Yeah, but are you paying attention to
what?
some of the things that he's overturning?
Yes.
And the Environmental Protection Agency and some of the things that they had in place for our environment.
And so,
cut 'em out.
and that's why I wanted to start with environment, because what I understand is the earth has always been here. But we have not.
Exactly. So the earth is going to survive.
Exactly. So what's going to happen is the earth is going to self-correct eventually. And you can believe that if you want to or not, but it is. It's going to self-correct to do what it needs to do to take care of itself so that it can be here forever and ever. And what we wanted to do is we need to take some responsibility and do some things ourselves and just be very, very important. So the environment, believe it or not, is a very important topic for me. Reparations. We can talk about reparations. Let's talk about that, because I had a friend recently to ask me, what do you think about reparations? Do you think we should get them? And I wrote, and I need to really read what I wrote. I wrote unequivocally, yes. Let me just tell you. The bottom line is we know that Africans were brought over here as slaves, right? They were brought over here, and they built this country on their backs, not for their benefit, not for their descendants' benefits, but for the benefits of the white man. That's just the truth about it. And so it was over 400 years of being in slavery, right? And then there was the Jim Crow laws and all the brutality and everything that's coming up now, the substandard education, the stealing of burning down of Black Wall Street communities, the lynching of men. I mean, when I can just go on and on and on. And so for me, yes, we are owed reparations. And I believe, and if they would ask me, and if they would invite me, I would say to them, I don't think one size fits all. I think we need to have a hodgepodge of things that the descendants of slaves can select from in terms of how they want their families benefited. Does that make sense? So what do I mean by that?
That's interesting.
I think if you want free education for the next 400 years, at least, for your descendants, you can select that.
Okay.
If you want land, you can select that.
Okay.
If you don't want to pay taxes and your generations for the next 400 years don't have to pay taxes, you can select that. If you want mortgages, housing free, you can select that.
Okay.
If you want, I don't know what the dollar amount is every year for the next 400 years,
okay.
you can select that. I just don't believe that there's going to be a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And you cannot tell me that this country cannot afford that. We can afford to do anything we want to do, fight wars. We've paid reparations to the Japanese, the Chinese. We've paid some reparations to the Native Americans, who we should have paid some reparations to. So for me, it's a no-brainer. And so I think it's something that has to be talked about. I think it's something that's going to happen, to be very honest with you. I'm not sure if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I would like to be a part of that conversation and a part of the planning around that. So what do you think about that, Walida? And even our Facebook followers, or anybody on social media, or anybody who wants to call in, what do you think about the conversation around reparations?
I think we're due them, and I think that we should have them, and we just need to really listen to the debate and the candidates, because that's going to be a strong topic. And what are they saying? What are they offering? How are they going to get this implemented? We know they're working in Congress toward it. It's a live conversation that's coming up. Yes. But yeah, we are deserving of it.
No doubt.
We are deserving of it. For a lot some of the things that you were naming, the lynching of our black men, the burning down of Wall Street, and those are just some of the prominent things.
Exactly.
That's what I was going to say. Those are just
Yes.
some of the things that we know about. But if we really studied our history or talked with some historians, it's things that we probably have no idea that took place that we are deserving of, you know.
Yeah.
And
I think until those wrongs
are made
because
right.
are made right, kind of sort of, because you can't right every wrong,
right.
but
holistically,
holistically you can do something about those wrongs, right? And for Mitch McConnell to say that nobody alive today had slaves, well, no, that's not even the point.
Right.
The point is you still benefit because of the color of your skin.
Right. What my friend said, what is it? Complexion protection.
Yeah, complexion protection. And that's just the honest truth about it. And so I strongly believe that it's time, that it needs to be done, and that we as a people, we have to come together on that. And until that happens, our land cannot be healed.
Yep.
It just cannot. And I don't have biological children, but I want my friends' children's children, my nieces and nephews and their children to have a better standing in life than what some of us had because of we were just coming out of the civil rights era, when I was born, and so some of this is still residual
back into it.
and trying to be thrust back into it. And so for me, I believe that reparations are owed and due us, and I just don't think that it's one size fits all.
Right.
And we have to start thinking outside of this narrow mindset about this is the only thing. No, we're diverse.
Yes.
Right? As African Americans, we're diverse. And so we can have diverse strategies or solutions to meet the needs of, I guess you're going to have to look at the kind of bell curve, kind of old school. Look at the bell, the majority in terms of the needs and what they want. And so I think that's an important conversation. And let me tell you something that just cracked me up the other day.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
It cracked me up. I heard they were talking about reparations, and I want to get back to some of the political stuff around reparations. But they were talking about reparations the other day on a radio show that I listen to quite often. And a white man, he called in. He said he identified as a white man. And he said, when the topic of reparations came up originally, I wasn't interested. He said, but I did my ancestry and my DNA testing.
That's crazy. So he wants his 48%.
And so he said, well, I found out and I was shocked that I had at least 3% African ancestry. So he said, I'm for reparations. And I was thinking to myself, really?
Wow.
Really? Because that's not. So he said, my ancestors.
People are going to come out.
Exactly.
Of the woodwork,
exactly.
I have a percentage of African American ancestry in me, and so I need mine.
And so he said, because my ancestors were Africans and they were brought over here in slavery, so I agree with, with reparations. But they're going to have to, of course. Whenever they design that bill, they're going to have to really, really think that through in terms of the language, because language is everything. And someone was saying to me the other day that, well, maybe, they should only go 10 years back. I said, absolutely not.
Well,
I said, that's not how you negotiate.
Yeah, right. No.
You negotiate, you go back over 400 years.
Right,
you don't ever
that's
tell somebody your bottom line, but you start with the greatest thing, right? You start with the greatest thing. And so it's a serious conversation, and I think it's time. I think it's going to happen. I don't know when, but I believe it's going to happen.
But what's important, I think, a lot of our children, and even maybe some in our generation, may not know their history to be able to participate in it. They don't know who were slaves. They don't know their family history, and so it's going to be important that we educate our children, our children's children, and our families about our family history, who were slaves, where we were slaves at, because we may not be here when we receive the reparations.
Right.
But they need to be here and be that voice for our family. So that's important that
Right.
we, share our family history with our,
and
with our
like you
children.
said, a lot of us don't know. And I think I mentioned this last summer when Ira and I went to the Essence Festival. Many of you know that I was born and raised in Chicago. And my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, is from New Orleans. And so while I was in New Orleans, I said, let me go and search the records to find out who my people, where my people live. So I was able to find where my great-grandmother and great-grandfather lived, the actual house.
Oh, wow.
But while we were there, so that was as far back as I could go because we weren't there that long. But while I was there, we went to a plantation. And I'm going to tell you something. I was speechless. I've been to plantations. I've Ira and I, when we travel, we try to, look at the historical things connected to us. But that particular plantation sent something through me because I'm thinking now I'm making a connection that perhaps, my great-grandmother's mother, father, and family members were there in that area and probably were slaves on that particular plantation.
Wow.
So I'm walking around because if you all don't know that plantation, when you walk around, there was a revolt. And I'm just going to give you a little history. There was a revolt, these black men, and of course another black slave kind of ratted them out. And so when they were found, they took them back and they chopped their heads off and put their heads on stakes and had their heads out there for days, I want to say weeks. And I'm looking at these people like, are any of these people my people?
Right.
Right?
You just don't know.
You don't know. And so my point is that we don't know our history, but that's by design.
Right.
You know, and because the families were broken up, all kinds of things. And so, these last names we have weren't our last names. They were our slave owners' last names and everything. So it's just a lot. And so I believe that reparations are due us.
Yes.
I believe that it's going to happen. Don't know when or what it's going to look like, but I would even offer up, please, when people are talking about reparations, don't talk about it as if it's just has to be this one thing.
Right,
I just
right,
think
no.
that we need to really think it through, have a strategy, and have a hodgepodge or, several options that people can select from.
Exactly.
And that's just how I feel about
That's
it.
awesome. Maybe you should run for office. Have you
Oh,
considered
goodness.
that?
I think I do have the temperament, but
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
So our guest is here, and so this is going to be funny, interesting, because I was just talking about one of the ideas should be free education for our descendants for the next 400 years. But while I was away, I want to go back to that. I took Ira, most of you all that know Ira, you know he loves to sing. He can sing.
Yes, he
and he
can.
loves live music. And so we also are on this journey to try to see as many of our living legends that are still performing as possible. And so 2 weeks ago, we attended the Capitol Jazz Festival. And let me tell you something. It was pouring down raining on this day, but they had Parliament Funkadelic scheduled for 7:45 on Sunday evening. And when I tell you it was jam-packed out there, the rain didn't stop the show. And when I tell you George Clinton,
Still got it.
and I know we went live, but it's nothing like seeing them perform live. It was absolutely incredible. And when you think about George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelics, they didn't need an introduction.
Nope.
Everybody else was like, let me introduce you to this person. And they just came out with their 30-piece band, playing
Real music.
real music, the craziness, Sir Nose, those of you that are in my generation, and I'll tell you, they rocked it for about an hour.
Wow.
Non-stop. It was absolutely incredible. And then, of course, last weekend was Father's Day.
Yeah.
And when we were at the Bethesda Blues Club for Mother's Day, we saw Hammond.
Yeah, Fred Hammond.
Fred Hammond. They were advertising that Zapp and Brick was going to be there. I'm just telling you. Zap and Brick were phenomenal. And if you all remember anything about Zap, remember the two brothers.
Yeah.
Roger. Murder suicide, right? And the other brother was playing the drums. And so he came out, and kind of talked about that whole situation.
Wow.
And while he was, as soon as he finished talking about it, if you ever been to the Bethesda Blues Club, you realize that it's not a very large place. It's very intimate. And with the two groups that was there, it was everybody, I was probably one of Alyssa was there, so she was young. So it was, a pretty mature crowd. And so all of a sudden we heard this commotion behind us, and we've never had any challenges there. So we turned and looked behind us, and what we saw were these police officers. So of course you see police officers, you're thinking that, like, what's going up? What's up, right? And so we look behind, but all of a sudden the EMT comes in, and somebody had a heart attack and died right there while during the performance. So they had to shut the performance down because they had to, bring the defibrillator and bring that person back to life. And they worked on that person. And Ira and I did a silent prayer, but then there was this guy in the back. He was like, I'm no pastor, and I don't even say I go to church every week, but we getting ready to pray up in here. And I'm going to tell you, the whole place was in order.
Wow.
Prayed. And guess what? They were able to bring that person back to life.
God.
And after they brought the person back to life, did not realize that one of the members of Zap is a pastor.
Wow.
And so he came out and had everybody just in the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
And they couldn't even come back and play. They tried to give us the little 10 minutes left we had.
Right.
But because there was another show, they could not, make up for that time. Right. So it was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so that's where I've been the last 2 weeks. And
hanging out, having fun.
Yeah, because it could have been me.
Yeah.
It could have been Ira. It could have been any of us.
Yeah.
Laid out, having a heart attack or whatever. And we don't know what happened with that person. But we pray that person is doing well. So, despite that, we had a wonderful time
awesome.
going to see these live bands. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to bring our guest on, make sure she's mic'd up, because you all do not want to miss this conversation with this dynamic lady, Regina Robinson. We'll see you shortly.
Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. We're just getting ready.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle, and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3:00 p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the South Side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to transition and hanging in there with us. Our guest is here. She called. She was running late, and I think she was a little frazzled. I said, take your time. I just wanted her to get here safely. And who we have here today is the phenomenal Regina Robinson. And Regina Robinson is going to talk with us about the college admissions process, as well as some tips that you need to know. And I want us to think about when we went to college, or if you have children now, what are some things that you wish you had known through that process? And so before we get into the conversation, introduce yourself to our audience, Regina, and tell them a little bit about who you are, because you're more than just a college coach.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for having me here with you guys on the show. I'm excited Listen, you always know something always trying to put a distraction or throw a curveball for you, but when you got a chance, the opportunity to bounce back, you better be ready to bounce back. And so today was my bounce back day.
Yes.
And so I am excited to have gotten here safely and so still with some time to share, right?
Yes.
So again, I'm Regina Robinson. I am your #1 college admissions expert. I help high school students and families navigate the college admissions process successfully by giving them the tools and resources to win in the game of college admissions. I am also the founder and CEO and developer of the women's movement, Unstoppable Woman on the Move. And I am excited, and I am an inner confidence strategist, and I work with women who are in business, starting business, and are afraid to take the jump and go to the next level because of so many things going on in their lives. They don't have the direction, they don't have the clarity, and most importantly, they don't have the confidence to make the move. And I am that pusher to push them into their next level.
Okay. Y'all hear that voice?
Yes. Confidence.
That inner confidence coming out.
Yes.
And so you're having an event, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. When is it?
So
Saturday?
We are on the countdown.
Yes.
Literally today is what? So let me count on my hands.
It's the
I know
23rd.
We are 6 days away from the Unstoppable Woman and Youth Retreat, and our theme is Pass the Torch and Unveil Your Legacy.
Yes.
This year is our 3rd year, but what I knew was for the first 2 years it was just women. And what I realized is that we have to catch our young girls and our millennial women too.
Yes.
So that they're not going through at an age that we are, and we won't reveal our age on this platform.
Well, I can tell by when you said you were counting on your fingers.
Yeah. So we are, we have to catch them now so that they don't have to be those women who are broken, those women who lack confidence, those women who don't believe in themselves, don't believe they have what it takes on the inside of them. If we can give them that power now, if we can reveal to them now what it's like to go from being broken to unbreakable, so they already have it, so they don't have to experience the broken.
Come on
then
now.
that's
Come on
why
now.
we
Come
have
on now.
created the Unstoppable Woman /Youth Retreat, and it's on Saturday, June 29th from 10 to 6 at the luxurious Turf Valley Resort in Ellicott City, Maryland. So you can still get your tickets up until Tuesday. You don't want to miss it. You want to be in the building. I promise you, you will not leave the way you entered.
Yes. And let me tell you something what's so important about that. And you all know that I give a conference. And yesterday I was scouting some locations for my 5th annual Women That Are Great Women Sharpening Women Conference, which will be held on March 28th, 2020. And one of the conversations that I had with the lady was that what ended up happening for my conference is that after the first year, the people that came back, they started bringing their younger children, daughters, nieces, cousins, and so that particular population has grown. And so what you said is so very true. You know, we can help ourselves, but if we're not helping those coming behind us, that can be a problem. And so the reason I wanted Regina to come on the show today is because we know that more and more of our children are attempting to go to college. And some of them are still first generation college students, a lot of them. And so they don't always have the help that they need to get into college. And we were just talking about that earlier. A friend of ours from years ago, a young lady came out of one of Maryland's school systems, and it was May, and she did not, no school picked her up. She had a 4.8 GPA, everything. No school picked her up. And guess what? We picked up the phone and called the Virginia State University House of the Trojans because I couldn't understand it, right? But there was no one to help facilitate that process. And so I asked Regina to come on because Regina has some inside thoughts and experience. And were you an educator before?
Yes. So I was a high school educator for 9 years, and I taught high school students. Right.
And so what made you make the transition?
So I was an educator for 9 years, teaching high school students. I taught business education courses. And I got to a crossroad where one year I was working at a school in D.C., and they were losing funding. And so the position that I currently held at that school was a position that they created. I was teaching the students there how to run, start, and operate their own small business as a certified entrepreneurship teacher. And so they were losing funding, and so I lost my job there. And I had just 2 years prior started my business and was kind of doing it part-time with taking the kids on the college tour. And so we all know, be careful what you pray about, right?
Yes.
And so literally nothing happens by accident. That day I became a full-time entrepreneur instantly.
Yes.
And so from there forward, and I've also am adjunct professor at Trinity Washington University as well. And so I love teaching now what we would call the college students and the millennials, right? And so there are a lot of students out there who are first generation students. I was a first generation college student. And so a lot of times they don't have the resources, they don't have the tools, and they don't have the support.
Right.
And it's not even just clubbed, is not even honed into just first generation anymore, because no matter what generation you are, there are plenty of families who have gone on to college, but it was decades ago.
Yes.
Right.
And so because the college, the process has changed,
Yes.
you have families who are using 20-year ago strategies for a new era that don't work anymore.
Exactly.
And so yes, their kids might be getting into school, but they're getting into school with a lot of debt behind getting into school.
Oh my goodness.
Or they're going to schools that they're not necessarily the right fit schools for them, and so they're not staying, right? And we all know that you can go, you're not getting your money back. It's not like they're going all of a sudden you decided this wasn't the place for you.
Exactly.
Oh well, give me
Right.
that money and going to find you somewhere new. That's how it works.
Let me just say this, because being a first generation college student for real, coming out of the inner city of Chicago at 17,
Not knowing what's next.
when I tell you, not a clue. And I tell people this story all the time. So this goes back to this whole conversation about reparations as well, because I was in an inner city school because I was considered bright or gifted for that inner city school. I was selected to go to a college prep high school. So I went to that college prep high school, ended up graduating a year early. And I want to talk about exposure and graduating a year early. So at 17, here I am deciding to go to college. And they were like, well, what school you want to go to? And I got accepted into all these schools in the Midwest. And then I met this recruiter. And the recruiter was like, you know what? I think you would fit well at a small school, an HBCU, where I didn't even know what an HBCU was, that they would nurture you. And the decision how we made the decision for me to come to Virginia State is because I said, you know what? I've never been to Virginia. I've never been anywhere outside of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Chicago. So I'm going to Virginia. And literally, that's how I ended up in Virginia.
That's how a lot of people are
exactly.
still today.
And that's how I selected the school. So I don't even know if there was a conversation about money or anything, because I don't remember any of that. But I had to take out student loans to go to school, right?
Absolutely.
And when I got to Virginia State, they give you these, and I want to talk about these entrance exams. And, so this is 1981.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to take these entrance exams, and guess what? I had to take the 3 remedial classes. I had my student loans paid for them, but I didn't get credit for them.
Right.
So I don't know if that was a blessing in disguise for me. And after that experience, I realized, I was like, oh, I can do what? As a youngster. So when you talked about this old school and then it's just our experiences, I think working with a coach such as you is so important. So tell us, what do you do? Because I think people want to know, what is it that you do when you coach?
So every and all. No, so we work with students on, first and foremost, students and families come to us, and when they find us, oftentimes they find us in their junior and senior year, which in reality is, once whatever they have is what we have to work with.
That's right.
And so if they were to find us in their 9th and 10th grade year, we can kind of make sure they're taking the right classes. Getting involved in doing summer programs in major areas that they're considering studying.
Yes.
Also looking at whatever it is and visiting the college campuses, right? Because we have a lot of students choosing schools they've never even had an opportunity to see.
I never went
And
to
so we
Virginia.
work with them on crafting their list of schools.
Yes.
We recommend schools to them based off of a survey that we do with them in an interview, Because here's the deal, you have to get to know your students. Because there's over 4,000 colleges in the United States, and most people don't even know that.
Wow.
And so how do you go from 4,000 colleges to the top 7 or 10 schools that you want to apply to? And remembering that every school you apply to costs money, application fees, right? And so we help our students to narrow their list down to a top 5 to 7 schools. We help them with the applications. We make sure they fill them out in its entirety. And then we work with them on their college essays. We do not write their college essays, but we make sure they find their voice in writing a successful college essay.
And let me interrupt you right there, because I think you're saying something that's key. You're saying you help the student to do that. And talk about why that's important, that the students actually go through the process and do this work.
So here's the deal. If parents are more invested in the process than their children won't survive. And so the kids have to be very invested in this. It is their process. It's their future. We have to make sure they make an investment into their future. And the process is that investment. In our program, we tell the parents all the time, they have to take a step back. They are the advocates, they are the supporters, but the students need to navigate this process, because when they get to college, parents can't go with them and they can't do it for them.
That's right.
And so parents can't call the professors whining or emailing them complaining, right? Because I know I'm a parent too of a high school junior, senior officially. And so we also help them with finding their voice and writing their essay. And so most importantly, all of the things that we do with students that's suited for success, we do it ethically. Because, with the scandal of people buying their way into college, we make sure students understand whatever you've done for the last 12 years, you've earned your way to go to a college, so you don't have to pay your way into a college.
Go ahead.
And so we make sure they ethically lean on their academics and their test scores and their extracurriculars, as well as their community service. And so we work with them on getting their academic resume created. We help them with scholarships. We even help the parents with the FAFSA, because here's the deal. The parents are required to fill out this document. And if they don't do their taxes, it's almost like, what am I supposed to do with this document? And so we make sure parents fill out the FAFSA correct, because one error can cost you a full ride scholarship where you're not getting the money from the aid side that can help make up the difference from the tuition side. And so we work with our families on everything around the college process. We helping the students understand whether they're a better SAT or ACT test taker, whether they're going to not be a great test taker, so they qualify for test optional, whether they're looking at schools that are going to give them academic merit money. So here at Suited for Success, it's all about us looking for the schools that's going to give our kids the academic merit money first. And then from there, they can dream. Everyone always says, when I go and speak at high schools and colleges and stuff, I always tell students, I'm not a dream killer, but I'm a reality checker. Here's the reality.
That's right.
You can apply to this school, but it does not mean you have the qualifications, but they will accept you, because college is a business, and they in a business of making money. Who money do they want? Your parents. And so yes, they might accept you, but with the understanding that you better have the money to pay that tuition, because there'll be no scholarships put on the table.
So you said something, I just learned something new. You said test alternative?
Test optional.
What does that mean?
So what test optional means is a lot of students are not great test takers. And so a lot of institutions have decided that the testing should not be a deciding factor for a student to get into their institution. And so as long as they have most schools are leaning on students having a cumulative of at least a 3.5 when they end their junior year. And then that way they can look at a school test optional. But here's the deal. Anytime you give something, you always take something, right? And so some schools have test optional penalty. And what that means is they will withhold some of the merit money. So if you were a student who qualified testing and GPA to get maybe $15,000 in merit money, which merit means academic money, parents, that means they don't care how much you make in income. Your students have earned the right to get that money. And so let's say it's a $15,000 academic merit money based off of test scores and GPA. But your student has the GPA and they're coming in test optional. If they're a test optional penalty school, your child can only get about $7,000 of that money.
Wow. Well, that is some new school stuff.
So you got to do your research.
And I think that's important. And I sent a mass email to all of my friends recently, because you're talking about these merit scholarships, but there are also these general scholarships. Can you talk a little bit about that, the general scholarships?
So there are thousands of scholarships scholarships, millions of dollars of scholarships go unclaimed every year.
Every year.
And so parents, here's the deal. If you don't hold your children accountable to applying to scholarships, they will not. So either you create a scholarship night in your house, or you're going to have them screenshot every time they apply to a scholarship, and they have to then send you the screenshot.
Yes.
So what we're implementing now for our Student for Success students is every month they have to apply to at least 5 to 10 scholarships.
Yes.
And they have to screenshot them and group text me and their parents to screenshot saying that they completed the scholarship.
Yes.
So here's the deal. These are children, and these are students that are young, and we're teaching them to become better stewards over their lives. And so we have to learn. We can't just expect them to become a steward, and we've not taught them how to become a steward.
That's right.
And so you can't just throw your children out there and say, get in the middle of the ocean and swim, and you ain't getting them no swimming lessons. Come on. And so we got to actually teach them what they need to do to make sure they can be successful.
Yes.
And so we're going to make sure we hold them accountable. So applying to scholarships, there's a database called FastWeb.
Okay.
And that's
FastWeb.
FastWeb.org. Fastweb.org is a scholarship database. And there's also a database and app called Scholly.
Yes, Scholly.
And that's
the one
SCHOLLY,
Yes.
Scholly. And so those are two great scholarship databases. And of course, the United Negro College Fund, UNCF, and then the Thurgood Marshall.
Right.
And so you can Google any scholarship, and there's scholarships out there because you're left-handed, or you wear glasses, or you're Hispanic, or you're African American.
Yes.
There are scholarships out there. Here's the deal. You don't know if you will win them, but you will never know if you could win them if you don't apply.
That's
Exactly.
right.
And the reason I brought it up, and you brought up Scholly, is because I was watching Shark Tank. I think it was about 2
yes.
years,
And
two and a
he was
half
on
years.
Scholly.
And he was on Shark Tank.
Absolutely.
And they were so impressed. He created an app to download all this information about these general scholarships. And these general scholarships are the ones that can travel with you to any school that you go to.
Yes, and you can do the Scholly online or on the app. I had an opportunity to meet the young man, and we both were on a panel speaking together about 3 years ago. And from there, I've been sharing his app because here's the deal. He won the money, so he knows where the money is.
That is correct.
Why not follow it and get
Yes.
it? If he's giving it right to you, all you have to do is click on it and apply.
Exactly. And so you talked about grade point average, and I really want to have a conversation about this in terms of where our kids fall and the importance of understanding how grade point averages are calculated. Can you talk just a little bit about that in terms of what's important in terms of getting your grade point average, but more importantly, how are these grade point averages calculated? And then if you can add this piece, does the high school you go to matter?
So grade point average is factored in a number of ways. So at different schools, whether it's private or public, they have honors AP courses that students can take in IB programs. So that automatically changes trajectory of people's GPA. And then you have some students who are not in AP or honors courses, so their GPA is always going to be on a 4.0 scale, and it'll never go over 4.0.
Okay.
However, if they're in AP or honors courses, they can have 4.3, 4.5. So those are the students you see graduating with these really high GPAs, and that's because they took a bunch of AP courses or honor courses to not inflate, but to just make sure their GPA go higher because they took the more rigorous classes.
Exactly.
So people have a misconception believing that I can't get into college because I didn't take any AP or honors courses, and that's not true. Everybody has even playing field. It's just maybe they're going to get more money because of their GPA and their academic requirements.
Right.
And so the GPA is based off of your grades that you get by quarter in each class. And so when you're doing A's and B's, you're going to have a pretty higher GPA. When you're getting D's and E's and F's, you ain't going to have a decent GPA.
Right.
And so, I always tell parents, it's time out for allowing our children to be mediocre.
Oh,
Exactly.
Say it.
C's
Exactly.
to me are mediocre.
They are.
You are not getting into top colleges with C's because you have too many. Listen, our students are no longer competing locally or nationally. They're competing
International.
globally.
Yep, globally.
And so
our
we have
children
to
are
make
bright.
sure they're prepared.
Yes, and
they're
so
bright. And they need to be prepared.
Yes.
And so when I meet parents will say, "Oh, my child got like a such and such GPA." I said, "Well, girl, give me their transcript."
Right.
Because we love to say what our children have and they really don't have.
Right.
And so some parents, please don't be that parent who never knows what your child is doing from semester to semester, from quarter to quarter. Get involved. As parents, we can't go on autopilot. We wouldn't even want to be on a plane flying and we thought it was on autopilot and it could crash because there's
Right.
nobody flying. Well,
Flying,
why would you
right.
let your child crash and burn
And you're not paying attention.
attention to their life?
And the reason I brought that up is because Walida was telling me a story about, I think, two young ladies were in a middle school program where they were taking high school courses in 7th grade and not understanding that whatever grade they got would be factored on their transcript. So you want to talk a little bit about that, Walida?
So everything you do starting in 9th grade is on your transcript.
Well, 7th.
It wasn't 9th
No, it was
grade.
7th.
It was 7th
No,
grade, but
but
it
I'm
was a
saying,
high
like, so
school
if you do a
course.
middle school course, that's a high school course, is going to be on your
Oh,
transcript.
that's right. Okay,
Right,
yes.
right,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what happened. That's what happened to Kristen in 7th grade. I think she took algebra 1 or something, and she didn't get a good grade. She got like a D or something. And so when they did her cumulative was low. So you have someone who's getting 4.8, 5.0s each
Every
semester,
semester.
and then her cumulative is a 3.5 or something like that. And so I was like, well, what's going on? And when I got the transcript, Regina was able to explain it to me and break it down. But I think a lot of parents may or may not be aware of that, you know, when your children are taking high school courses
When they're young.
in middle school when they're young.
Because
And so-
they'll push them to go ahead and take, because they feel like if they've already doing very well in their courses,
Right.
then they'll say, okay, you can take this class.
Right.
But you have to know your student, and you have to have, it's okay, just because the school recommends you put your child in AP courses doesn't mean you should put your child in
right.
AP courses.
Right,
They
exactly.
have to be ready for the rigor. You know your child. You know if they're lazy and they're going to need an extra push, because AP courses, they are weighed heavily.
Right.
Right.
And so it's easy to destroy your GPA, and it's
Oh,
much
my goodness.
harder
Harder
to,
to bring it
rebuild
back.
your
Yes.
GPA.
Yeah.
And so parents and students
Yes.
need to keep that in mind.
Yes, and so Walida, I know that you're working with Regina. So
Yes.
talk to our audience about why did you decide to connect with Regina to help you through this process for your daughter?
I have been watching Regina for a couple of years. We share mutual friends, a lot of them, so I won't even start naming. And so when Kristen, of course, I came to her when Kristen was in the 11th grade. She's a rising senior now. But I just didn't, I have so much going on, and I just didn't feel like I would be able to devote the time, the necessary time and effort into making sure that the scholarships and the essays and the applications, I just couldn't wrap my head around doing all of that. And so rather than her be forced to go to a school that wasn't one of her top choices or something, and me miss out on scholarship money and this, you know, and so I was like, I have to make the investment. And I love it because she's held accountable.
Right.
And
you all look, you heard her
doing
voice.
it
She was a teacher.
herself, and you know, I love it. And you know, and I've watched people. I've seen it happen to people. Their children graduated from school and they didn't have things in place. And so some of the schools that they went to, they're good schools, however, but it wasn't their child's first choice.
Yeah.
It wasn't their first choice for their child. And if they would have had time, I think, to put more effort into it, they would have done a little more. So I didn't want to be caught like that. You know, my Queenie, she's bright, and you know, I just want the best for her. You know,
Absolutely.
and so
And sometimes you have to make that investment.
You have to
spend
make that investment.
Exactly.
If you know that you do not have the time, the energy, or the wherewithal, because like you said, what we did 20 years ago, what our parents did 20 years ago to get in college. Listen, I don't know how I ended up at Florida A&M, but to God be the glory. You know what I'm saying? So you know those antics don't work anymore. I mean, my track coach graduated from Florida A&M. You know, we knew people. You know, and I was able to get in. I took the SAT. I had a GPA. I was able to get in school. But like you, when I went, I had to take
Isn't that
remedial.
something?
I had to go. When I graduated from high school, my plane left the next morning because I had to go to summer school.
Right.
And when I had to pass summer school in order to be an official student in the fall. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want that for my baby. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want that for my children. And so it's worth the investment, you know, especially when you have a lot going on.
So, you know, time is always running quickly on the show. What, I know you're going on a tour. What schools do you go to? You go to a different set of schools every year, or?
I know, so we do this tour every year around March or April. It's always in March or April. And we go to Georgia State, Clark Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse. Then we go to Virginia State, Hampton, and Old Dominion, and then we go to A&T and Central.
Yes, good.
So it's always that same tour in March or April.
Yep. And so as we come to a close, what is it that you just want to say to parents in terms of encouraging them and getting them to think a little differently about this whole approach to the college admissions process?
I think that parents have to remember it's no longer the way it used to be.
Right.
And so we can't use old school, like pretty much tactics for new world era realities. And so make sure if you're not capable of assisting your child, get them the support they need. You can't keep telling your children to get this done, get that done, make sure you do this, and they're not sure of what this means.
Right.
And so remembering that at every high school, unless it's a small private school, there are over 450 students to every one guidance counselor. So they are not sitting down helping your child. And so if you're not sure, you can imagine they're not sure.
Right.
And so you can't put that much pressure on a child and think that they can be successful with that pressure. And so 9 times out of 10, they're picking a school that is not ideally the school that's a right fit for them. It's just somewhere that they're willing to settle because they don't know anywhere else. And so as a mother, for me, with my daughter being a rising senior, and for any parent, I know our goal is to make the best and have the best for our children. And so we got to be willing to sometimes sacrifice in order for our children to have the best. And so the return on investment far outweighs. We had 9 students this year from our graduating class of 2019, and those 9 students earned $1.3 million in scholarships and grants. And they're still not done earning. In the past, we've had 15 students earn $2.9 million in scholarships. You do the math. So we know the resources, we know the tips, we know the strategies, we know how to help these students win the game of college admissions. And so literally, I wrote the book, Winning the Game of College Admissions.
Yes, I was going to say, yes.
And it's an Amazon bestseller. And so listen, it has all the resources and tools and tips you and your student needs. You can get it on Amazon, and you can get it on our website at suited4success.org. Suited4success.org. And listen, we have resources, free resources on the website. Reach out to us, do a discovery call. We can help you to get on track. But don't keep trying to do this with blindfolders on and then keep saying there's no resources out there to help you. It's out there. Are you willing to take the resources and run with it? Don't be caught paying your child's way into education. Do it the ethical way, because at Suited for Success, we only believe in ethically helping students win the game of college admissions.
And so those of you that are out there, I got a nephew, Relita's children, you all know that this is the lady that you have got to get in contact with. And she's already told you, give them the website again, because I'm sure it has your contact information on it.
So the website is suited4success.org, and that's SUITED, the number 4, success.org.
Yes.
So look us up, reach out. Our office is 240-318-3468, and we would love to assist you and your student on successfully winning the game of college admissions.
And I would love for you to come back, because I believe you have so much more to offer our audience. And so we can have a whole hour with you. Yes. And so we can plan that. I know it's a lot of information to our viewers, but we need you all to understand this, because we have to break the cycle of our children coming out of school with all of this debt. I remember coming out of school with $16,000 in debt, and that was 1986. That was a lot of money.
Yes. And there are a lot of people our age still trying to pay.
Thank God I'm not still trying to pay for it, but I'm telling you.
So the ultimate goal should be, here's the deal, you should be looking for college to pay you to attend, and not you would pay to attend college. Especially when your child has done the hard work.
Exactly.
Let them get rewarded for their hard work.
Well, thank you so much, Regina. I'm so glad you got here safely. We're going to have her back. And so you all can start thinking about, some of the things she said. And if you have any questions, you can email us, put them on our social media feeds, and we will get to those questions, because this is a very important topic.
Call me. I'm working with her personally.
That's right. And she's working with her personally.
I'm working with her,
Yes,
And again, I want to say thank you to Welita for always just stepping in. And so this is our
The number
girlfriend.
one co-host.
That's right, number one co-host. and so this is our girlfriend time. So it always
Yes.
works out.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you, Facebook family. Thank you, Listen Vision Live audience. We'll see you on next Sunday. Let me tell you about next Sunday. We're bringing back, I don't know if you all remember Greg and Ray from Greg's Auto. Both of them went to jail, had some problems. They're coming back with their wives.
Oh, that's going
To
to be
talk.
nice.
And so I'm excited about that. And so have a blessed afternoon, and we'll see you all on next Sunday.
Bye. Hi, mommy.